Geek Time.
Copy the countdown control. The liquid hydrogen vent valve has been closed and flight pressurization is underway.
To Geek Time.
Mark and counting.
If you know how to give the Vulcan hand sign, if you've never kissed a girl or tasted wine, if you write all your papers in Linux, then you know it's Geek Time. If you still live with your parents and you're 38 years old, you got a pocket protector and you blog about having a cold. It's Geek Time. Can't wait to get an iPad. It's Geek Time. You're like Ogle and Superbad. It's Geek Time. You got a coffee mug warmer and an Iron Man mask. It's Geek Time. You dress up and go to Comic-Con. It's Geek Time. You know all the lines from Wrath of Khan. It's Geek Time. You like asteroids and shiny droids and iPhones. It's Geek Time. Time to get a life. It's Geek Time. You will never get a wife. It's Geek Time.
The next generation. Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Welcome to Geek Time, the next generation.
Welcome to Geek Time.
Hosted by Chris Bors
Don't cross the stream. Make it so.
and Tim Warner.
Never tell me the odds.
Bringing you all things geek-worthy from the world of pop culture.
Hello and welcome to Geek Time, another episode coming at you. I'm your host, Chris Boris, and this is Season 1, Episode 7. And today, it's going to be a little downer maybe because this is going to be our in memoriam episode. We're going to be celebrating the life of a couple stars in pop culturedom, and we have a couple guests to help us do that. So the first guest, Barry Putt, he wrote a book on the TV show Alice, which stars Linda Lavin, and she died over the holiday season, so we'll be talking about that. And then after that, I'm very excited because I ended up getting the very last interview with Morgan Lofting. And for those of you who don't know, she voiced the Baroness in G.I. Joe. And yeah, so I'll be talking about that because it's kind of a bittersweet type of thing because I ended up seeing her at a Comic-Con event, and I ended up getting her very last interview. And it was really crazy because I ended up looking her up after I edited the interview that I had with her together, and I saw that she died. She passed away 2 weeks after I had gotten her interview. So I don't know if the trip was too much for her or what, but so sad to see that, yeah, she passed away. And I can tell you, meeting her was just I was geeking out the entire time. I'll talk about that in the Morgan segment later on. But yeah, just very crazy. I can't believe that I have the very last interview with her, and we'll be presenting that on Geek Time today, which I guess you could call a Geek Time exclusive.
A Geek Time exclusive.
So, all right, as you can tell, I'm running solo today. Tim is not here with me this week, but he'll be back next week. So it's just me in the saddle here at Geek Time. And the first thing I want to do is do a segment we call
Geeking Out or Freaking Out.
So one of the things I am absolutely geeking out on is I saw a couple memes that McDonald's, even though I don't eat at McDonald's, they're bringing back a character that they retired back in the early 80s, which is Uncle O Grimacey. Now, I ended up doing an Irate the 80s episode on this back in 2013, I think it was, and I got into the whole history of this character. So if you want to know what this character is all about, make sure you check out that video because, yeah, he came around when McDonald's did the whole McDonaldland campaign. He came around every year. They recorded one episode with him a year, and I think it started in 1976, and they did one every year after that, 1977, 78. I think they only did 3 or 4 of them, and they just keep rerunning them over and over throughout the years, but then they phased him out. Like 1985 is when they really phased out a lot of the characters like Captain Crook and things like that. And the reason I know that is because here we go, Geek Time exclusive.
A Geek Time exclusive.
Boy, this show is full of them today. But I'm announcing for the very first time, I am working on a book about McDonaldland. And I'm announcing that here on Geek Time because, yes, I'm a geek. I geek out over the whole McDonaldland campaign. And I've been writing this book. No kidding. I started writing this book in 2012. And since then, I have interviewed over 100 people for inclusion in this book. I've got their quotes. I've got pictures. I've got stuff, archive footage that you've never seen before, artwork, characters that they submitted but never got approval on. Like, it's all there. It's going to be quite the nugget of history. And what's amazing about this is there's about 5 or 6 different Ronalds over the years, Ronald McDonald. And I ended up getting to interact with the people involved with every single different Ronald campaign that existed, all the way back to the very beginning, 1965. And it's crazy because a lot of these people, I think about 20 people that I interviewed have now passed away. So these interviews that I am going to be putting into this book are priceless. Like, you can't get that back because, yeah, they passed away. So, yeah, I'm so excited about seeing Uncle Grimacey back with McDonald's. And of course, he is the Shamrock. Every character in McDonaldland is associated with one of the McDonald food items. And Uncle Grimacey, of course, has shamrocks all over his, what do you call that, vest that he wears. And he's all green, so he represents the Shamrock Shake. And of course, St. Patrick's Day is approaching, so they're bringing him back. I can't wait. Now all I want is a Funko Pop figure of Uncle Grimacey. I've got all the other McDonaldland characters. I want Uncle Grimacey. So Funko, if you're listening, I want an Uncle Grimacey, and this is the perfect time to get one out. Like, come on, let's do it. Let's do a joint venture on that one. Advertising campaign.
Nerd alert! Nerd alert!
Oh, yeah. And of course, when it comes to McDonaldland, I'm super nerd because I know all there is to know and more. Like, you're going to get so many cool things out of this book. So, yeah, that is just one of the many big reveals that I'm going to be dropping in 2025. Some of the meetings that I've been taking lately have just been like, wow, jaw dropping. So, yeah, get ready. This is going to be the year of Chris Boris, Irate Gamer. And of course, if you like Geek Time, more Geek Time coming at you. Oh, I love all the guests that are coming our way. So I'll talk about more of that in the future as the book gets more finalized and whatnot. But all right, so I want to move on to some geek news and notes. So, all right, a lot of trailers dropping this week. Holy cow, we got a new Fantastic Four trailer that looks amazing. And if you look at the animation that they're going for, the computer animation that they're going for, it feels just like the 1960s cartoon style of Fantastic Four that they're going with. And if you saw the thing in the recent trailer, yeah, they just harken back to that 1960s look where the brow is very defined, sticks out, and they got the robot. The robot looks amazing. I just love the nods to the 60s, the 70s, even the film stock, or whatever you call it. They don't use film stock anymore, but the color grading of the scenes in this movie harken back to that 1970s look. And I love this. Like, it's just, it looks like an awesome period piece. Just all that old technology, reel-to-reel things, whatnot, and a lot of nods. They also did a nod to the Ed Sullivan, the Beatles introduction look, where all the Fantastic Four are standing on a stage and it's got the arrows pointing down. I was like, wow, that looks just like the stage from the Ed Sullivan's show where the Beatles made their debut with the, and of course that stage I believe had arrows as well. So a lot of nods to history. I love it. I can't wait for this movie. I know Tim was like, they're going down this multiverse thing. I just can't wait because I know it's just going to be part and parcel of the overall story. And this is, Marvel's gotten away from big storylines and things like that. And I think this movie's just going to bring it right back. I that's what I feel, gut feeling. I'm not crazy about Captain America. I'm not going to go see that. I have no idea what the reception will be with this movie, but I can kind of get a feeling of where it's going already based on public opinion. But as for Fantastic Four, I say bring it on. Let's go. All right, so in video game news, it looks like the Switch 2 is making a lot of headlines lately. And I guess a teaser came out recently that fans are suspecting might allude to a Super Smash Brothers new installment for the Switch 2. And I guess we won't find out until April, I believe the article said that I was looking at. But here's the thing. Here are my thoughts on if they do a new Super Smash Brothers. And here's my worry, because I've always been a big fan of the Super Smash Brothers franchise. And I felt the last one, they kind of dropped the ball. And maybe from a money standpoint, they didn't. But I did not like the characters they picked as the bonus add-on characters that they threw into this, because they're like, okay, we're only going to bring in X amount of characters as bonus characters, and then that's it. And the people they brought in were like Joker from Persona 5, which I felt did not need to be there. I felt that was a money grab trying to get the Persona 5 fans in the door, to try to get them to purchase the game. I feel there has to be some rules to bringing characters into this universe. Number one, they've got to be an iconic staple over the years. They've got to be well known. And I feel it should be a nostalgic thing from the past, from the NES, SNES. And I feel that there's a lot of characters from the past that they need to bring into this that they haven't done yet. Number one, Bomberman. They need to bring in Bomberman. For them not to bring Bomberman into this universe is ludicrous. Second, and I've got more here, because Q*bert, to give Q*bert the snub, like what the hell? He had a cartoon. That dude was on fire. He was featured in Wreck-It Ralph. Why have they not picked Q*bert? This is ridiculous. Also, Peter Pepper. He was also in Wreck-It Ralph in the background. He should be up for grabs. Maybe not as well known as the other characters, but he was an arcade. He was there, man. He was one of Midway? Like, he was a big character for them. And I would love to see his superpower, like making burgers or flinging them at people. Like, I think that would just be so funny. And then what about Dirk the Daring from Dragon's Lair? Like, why isn't he being considered? Like, who is picking these characters? Like, these are the characters they should be picking and putting into this. I mean, yeah, they got Simon Belmont. Awesome. I loved it. First of all, I wanted to see all the characters that were in Captain N. And they did that. Kid Icarus, Mega Man, Simon Belmont, they got him in there. Awesome. But on the other side of the coin, I would love to see like King Hippo, Eggplant Wizard. I think that would be really neat. Mother Brain, maybe. Okay, maybe not. That'd be kind of dumb. But Q*bert, like, he should be a Super Smash Brothers staple in there, spitting stuff out his nose or whatever. I don't know. And the way and could you imagine his Super Smash ability? Like, just like this weird wonky board that comes out of like a MC share painting. Like, okay, Steve and Alex from Minecraft, that makes sense because look how big that is. That was just a phenomenon. But Joker from Persona 5, give me a break. Like, come on, man. Some of the Pokemon that they've added into that roster too did not have to be there. Like, come on. Like, you're going to pick these Pokemon over iconic characters like Bomberman? And I know some people are like, well, Bomberman was a trophy. I don't give a crap. Throw Bomberman in there. I know people want Waluigi too. So just fuel the fans' desire. Put him in there. I don't care if he's already a trophy. It makes no sense. They can exist as both things. Who said they can't? So that's my rant on that. We're going to get a Super Smash Brothers next installment someday. And I just hope the roster is a little bit better this time. And Frogger, I mean, come on. Yeah, Frogger, like, where the heck is Frogger at? So talk about snubbing. And when it goes back to Joker from Persona 5, I would pick Scorpion from Mortal Kombat before we did that. And can you imagine if they dropped in Mortal Kombat characters? You could actually fight Street Fighter characters against Mortal Kombat characters. Would that not be the coolest freaking thing ever? I don't know if Capcom would go for that, Because I'm sure they have to, and that's probably one of the reasons that we haven't seen Mortal Kombat characters in there yet, because I bet they have to get like Capcom and all them to sign off on it as well. Like, hey, we've got your competing people in here. Is that okay with you? And if it isn't, I have no idea what kind of legwork they have to do to bring these characters into that universe. But my God, I like the opportunities that they could bring in, and they bring in Joker. Just like, oh my God. So, all right, that ends our first segment here. When we return, we'll be talking to Barry Putt and all things Alice.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Geek Time continues transmitting next with
Barry Putt and Morgan Lofting.
All right, all you toy collectors, Hasbro has a brand new Spider-Man themed collection going on. It's called Venom Versus, because I guess they're focusing on all things Venom in 2025. So I don't know if this is actually, if they're doing it with a tie-in with a video game or a cartoon or a property, but it seems like Venom is their main theme. They're bringing in a Venomized Peter Parker, Venomized Miles Morales. They're doing big figures, little figures, so anything that appeals to you. They even have a Venom mask. Just,
it's all symbiote all the time.
You can get these at Targets, Walmart's, Amazon, so get your Venom versus Spider-Man figures today. All right, guys, so if you're a fan of the Irate Gamer series on YouTube, which was my flagship show, they are now available on Blu-ray. I finally did the first 2 volumes, and you can get the first, 80 episodes on 2 volume sets. So it's quite the nostalgic overload for all you guys.
Nice.
So the first edition has 61 episodes in all, contains seasons 1 through 6. The second set contains seasons 7 and 8, which contains over 3-4 hours of content, bonus features, all that good stuff. And if all goes well, I'll have the third set being worked on this summer, which will contain seasons 9 and 10.
Plus,
so
Ronnie the Skeleton's going to do commentary, right?
Ronnie the Skeleton is there in all his glory, even in bloopers and bonus scenes and all that good stuff. So if you want that, go to Ghost Dr. Chris. That's where they are available for sale. Oh, I want to get my Irate Gamer sets.
Hello, everybody. Jason David Frank, and we're here at Wizard World in Ohio. It's Morphin' Time here on Geek Time.
All right, welcome back to Geek Time. And like I said, this is the in memoriam episode. And bringing us back from break is the Green Ranger himself, which, he passed away as well, very tragically. I was so happy to get that ID from him before that happened. So, rest in peace there, David. And this is the in memoriam episode because we're celebrating the life of a couple people that have recently passed. The first one being Linda Lavin, who passed away, I believe it was December 29th. So right after Christmas. And in the late 70s, she had a booming career with the show Alice. And I ended up seeing this a lot in syndication. And the author of her book wanted to come on and talk about Linda's career for a while. So let's take it away.
Geek Time now presents a guest that will take us to Mel's Diner, and we may kiss some grits because he knows everything there is to know about the hit TV show Alice. Here's Barry Putt.
Barry, welcome to Geek Time. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Chris. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you wrote the book on Alice, which is Linda's hit TV show that aired in the 70s. Now, I'm a little bit too young to remember when it first aired, but I was there when it was in syndication. I think it was on the USA Network. They seem to have all the programming from the 1970s that they're airing. And I remember seeing this specifically with my mom over the years, and it was an interesting show. It was great. And so you wrote a whole book really chronicling that TV show. So how long did this book take you?
It took me a year. Actually, I was contracted by the publisher to write it in a year. So I did it all in 1 year.
Okay, great. And one of the things that I didn't know, just as a casual viewer of the show, is that it was actually based on a movie.
Yes, it was based on Martin Scorsese's film, which was made a few years before the TV series came out.
Was it loosely adapted? Was it?
I would say it was loosely adapted. So part of the film took place in Mel and Ruby's cafe in the movie. And that part was genesis for the TV series, essentially.
Gotcha. And I know this is, you mentioned this in the book, but it was like one of the first TV shows that really focused on the woman and the woman's career and things like that. And I think the very first was, or in that generation, I know we had I Love Lucy and things like that, but later on we had Mary Tyler Moore, and she kind of set the stage for that. So they were kind of building on that premise, and it just really took off for them.
Definitely. Yeah, she was in the 1970s. That's kind of when more focus on women working in career. And Alice, the character of Alice, was a main focus at that time and a really good model for that image.
Gotcha. And this ran for 9 seasons. So this wasn't just a softball hitter. It really hit.
It did, yes. It was on from 1976 to 1985.
Now, one of the things I really remember about the show is that, okay, it's in a diner setting, and you had 3 main characters, which were the waitresses, and then you had Mel, who ran the establishment. He was the cook, and he was like the grumpy Gus of the group. And the one thing that stands out is they always had the guest stars, like the popular guest stars of the day. I think they had George Burns at one point. And can you explain a little about that?
When the series Alice started in the first season, it kind of struggled to find an audience. And it went through a number of producers and directors. And during that time, they did bring in, I think, a few different guests. But once season 2 began, that's when Marilyn Davis and Bob Carroll Jr. took over. And they were as producers. And they started to bring in more guests. So they had Art Carney, George Burns, Desi Arnaz, Dinah Shore, a lot of people that were, very well known in acting at that time.
Yeah, and with those kind of TV shows, they have a point where if they're a hit, they go through kind of this retooling phase where they get better cameras. I noticed from like season 1 to season whatever it was, 2 or 3, they redesigned the entire diner. I think it was very big at one point, and then they kind of scaled it back and to make it look better for on-screen appearance.
They did. The first episode was done in a whole different set. It looked very different from the rest of season 1. And then in season 1, it looked pretty similar for the whole season. They did a redesign in season 2 where they added a back room to the diner where they had 2 different doors for bathrooms. In the first season, there was just 1 door. And then the whole outlook, the whole look of the seating area for the diner was renovated as well. And they did that actually throughout the whole season. But the biggest changes, I think, were early in those first couple of seasons.
Gotcha. And I think the biggest catchphrase to come out of this show was "Kiss My Grits." Can you talk about that?
Sure. That show was actually known for a number of different catchphrases, but that was definitely the best known. That one was thought of by the writers on the show early in the first season, and Polly Holiday, who played Flo and said that catchphrase, she actually questioned it because she was from the South and it was not a Southern, phrase. But the audience really loved it, and so they kept it in the show. Now, when Polly Holiday went off to her show Flo, which was a spin-off of Alice, they did not have, even though the character Flo was still in the series Flo, they did not use "Kiss My Grits" in that show.
Oh, that's interesting to point out. Yeah, and it's like it may be lost on today's audiences, but back then, if you had a hit TV show, they always took certain components away from that show and spun them off into their own TV series. They did the same thing with Three's Company. They had ropers, and a lot of times it would backfire. Like the show would not perform as well as the original show. Sometimes it would, like with Laverne and Shirley and things like that. But with like ropers, I remember the actors that went over to Roper's, they always regretted making that move. They're like, oh, we should have stayed on, even though, I think it was Don Knotts that took over and just really exploded in that role. But Flo kind of suffered that same fate, did it not?
Yeah, it did. It was on for 2 seasons, or kind of a season and a half, I think about 29 episodes. It was very popular for the first season, but which consisted of 6 to 8 episodes. So it wasn't a whole lot. So it was a good show, but it did suffer, some audience interest, unfortunately.
Right. And don't feel too bad for her, guys, because Flo ended up showing up in the Gremlins later on. So she still had a career with that.
Yes. Gremlins, then the TV series Private Benjamin, she was on that. She did some other films, and also she did audiobooks. She narrated some audiobooks as well.
Gotcha. And going back to the guest stars aspect, I know you pointed out, I believe, that they did a Dukes of Hazzard crossover. And boy, Dukes of Hazzard was super popular back in the early 80s. They had that, and they had Boss Hog jokes in there, mentioned, and then Jay Leno had an appearance on the show.
He did. He was on one episode of the series. Yes.
Now, doing this book, what do you consider your favorite era? Because they went through different phases, different characters that they switched out and things like that.
Wow. I've never been asked that question. It's a great question. I love to see the evolution of the characters. So I would say that I liked the show more as it advanced. I really love to see the character of Vera kind of come into her own. In the first season, she was kind of one-dimensional. And then she really began to have a life. She started to date. She started to. Oh, right. She was married. She became a really good tap dancer. She had skills. So, her as a character was somebody that I really enjoyed her development on the show.
Yeah, and in the book, you were talking about how in the second season, one of the reasons they went through the retooling was that the network thought the episodes that they're producing in the beginning were boring, so they brought in new producers.
Yes. In fact, in season 1, the show didn't have a full, it was only renewed at about 4 episodes at a time. So although we see it as a full season of 20 some odd episodes, right? It only was renewed incrementally, or we'll give it a couple more episodes and I would give it a couple more. And then in season 2, the executive producers, they brought in two writers, Marilyn Davis and Bob Carroll Jr. They were writers for Lucille Ball from the early days of her radio show, My Favorite Husband. And My Favorite Husband was the radio show that turned into I Love Lucy, essentially. And they worked with Lucy on all of her shows, I Love Lucy, The Lucy Show, Here's Lucy, and then Life with Lucy, which was her final show. So they were brought in the second season of Alice, and then they stayed until season 9 of Alice. And they were really responsible for bringing the show up into the top 15 most watched series for pretty much the whole time that they were producers there.
Oh, that's amazing. And so Linda Lavin was very popular at that point. And I remember later on, she appeared in a show. It was called 9JKL. I think it was on CBS. And I remember watching it. I was like, the entire time I was like, who is that? I remember her. So I had to look her up online. I'm like, oh yeah, she was in Alice. And I enjoyed that show. I think it needed a little something extra, so they canceled it after 1 or 2 seasons. But it was a joy seeing her return to the TV.
Yeah, and she's actually in a new series that's coming out that she did just before she passed away. I believe it's on Netflix. It's a sitcom. And she had 3 more episodes to shoot that she wasn't able to do. So there's a new series coming out in the first half of this year, and she's also going to be in a feature film that's coming out this year too.
Oh wow! She was busy up until the end, it seemed.
Yes.
So now, did you ever get to meet her?
I met her a few times. I had an opportunity to talk to her a little bit about the book. She wasn't available to interview for the book. I had reached out, but she wasn't available to interview for the book.
Gotcha. Oh, and one last thing. I saw there was an actual Mel's Diner out there. Have you been to that?
I haven't been to the Mel's Diner. I have called them. But the Mel's Diner that's associated with the TV series is in Phoenix, Arizona. how that came about is that during season 1, the producers wanted to find a diner to feature in the opening credits. So they went to Phoenix and they came upon the diner. It had been around, I think, for about 20 years at that point, had a couple of different owners. At the time, it was called Chris's Diner. And they asked the owner if she would change the name of the diner to Mel's Diner, just the sign, so that they could shoot the sign, and she agreed. And it was starting in season 2 onward, 2 through 9. The diner still operates today. It has a lot of memorabilia from the show spread out around, even some scripts and different things, signed photos, and the menu itself has photos of the cast.
Gotcha. All right, Barry, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And if you're interested in the book, it's called Alice, Life Behind the Counter in Mel's Greasy Spoon. Thanks again, Barry. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Great talking to you.
You too.
Technical difficulties. We stand by. Geek Time continues transmitting next with
Morgan Lofting.
All right, Tim. So one of the sponsors of the show is McFarlane Toys. They sent me a big case of Batman toys from Batman Forever. And this was a movie, I know it gets a lot of crap now, but back in the day, I enjoyed this movie. No, it wasn't Tim Burton, but
better than Batman and Robin.
But I gotta say, McFarlane did an amazing job, as you'd come to expect with McFarlane. The sculpts are amazing with Batman, Robin, Riddler, Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face.
And Tommy Lee Jones was there.
Yes, and of course, like I said, they sent me the wrong Batmobile. I did not want the glow-in-the-dark one. I wanted the one that came with Alfred. So there's like an exclusive figure there. There's a Build-A-Figure of the Man-Bat equivalent of that bat that flies in the dream sequence.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. I put that thing together, and I'm just having a great time, especially with the Schumacher Batmobile. I got the wrong one, but it's still incredible. It's
probably my second favorite Batmobile, too.
I went back and watched that movie. The Batmobile only got like 1 minute of screen time, which is a shame because can you imagine how long it took to make that Batmobile? I would be mad if I was the sculptor.
That's ridiculous. I think that Batmobile has actually lasted the test of time. What was it? The Arthur movie with Russell Brand? The beginning of the movie, he starts with him stolen the Batmobile or whatever. And I think
I didn't see that. That's funny.
Schumacher Batmobile. I think it's that Batmobile.
Oh, so cool. Okay.
I feel like that Batmobile is iconic, and it is definitely one that would be awesome with your collection.
Yeah, so if you're interested in the McFarlane toys, make sure you go to the website. They've got a store there, or you can check out for them on Amazon. You can find them at Targets and Walmarts.
Hello, everybody. This is the Baroness from G.I. Joe, and you are listening to Geek Time.
All right, well, welcome back to Geek Time, and yes, that was Morgan Lofting doing an ID for the show. Boy, it's just worth it just to get that. Have her reprise her role as Baroness one last time for Geek Time. There is no greater honor. I think I can retire right now and I'd just be like, wow. So, yeah, for this segment, we're going to celebrate the life of Morgan Lofting. As you know, she played the Baroness on G.I. Joe. It like I said, it's kind of bittersweet of me presenting this one because at the same time, I'm very excited that I ended up getting her very last interview, her very last thoughts, very last words that I can bring to you, because I was at the Retropalooza that she was at, ended up interviewing her, and 2 weeks later, she passed away. That's when she passed away. So, like I said, I don't know if the event itself had something to do with it, but yeah, she just, wow, you just don't know when people's time is up. And when I was interviewing her, I had no idea. She seemed full of life and just very eager to talk about her time as the Baroness. She was the voice of Baroness. So let me talk about, before we get to the interview, I want to talk about how I ended up meeting her, because that's a whole thing too. So I was picked up from the airport because I was one of the guests at this Retropalooza, and we were waiting at another gate. Me and the driver were waiting at another gate to pick up the voice actors. And so we picked up Bill Ratner, which his interview is in the very first episode of Geek Time. So thank you, Bill, for doing that. And then we were waiting for Morgan. So we picked up Morgan. And then as we were driving into town, we were just having this lovely conversation. And I'm geeking out because in the back seat, I'm listening to the guys that did the voice of Flint and then the person that did the voice of Baroness. So I hear them in the background going, yes, G.I. Joe coming at you. Yes, I'm the Baroness. Like in their voices. It was just so amazing. And I'm just sitting there eating it all up. I got a big smile on my face. And it was interesting because she was telling me that she's from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm from Toledo, Ohio. So we talked about, I go down there all the time and visit family. And so we're talking about the outlet malls that they have down there and stuff like that. So we had a great conversation. And then when we got to the hotel, that was a whole thing too, because there something set her off where she was very hungry and I guess their restaurant was closed or something. And I felt like I was in the position where I got to take care of her. So she checked in and then she wandered away. And so I checked in, did all my things, and they're like, would you like a water? And I was like, yeah. I couldn't give me another one. So I gave the extra water to Morgan, and I was like, I think there's a restaurant down the street. And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, oh, I'm hungry now. I can't wait. So and then she went up to her room. And then the next morning or the next day, I ended up seeing her. I was like, hey, I was like, I wanted to catch up with her. I'm like, did you find somewhere to eat? I'm making sure she was taken care of. And she was like, yeah, I ordered something out and it came. So I was like, oh, thank God. So the entire event, we were just kind of like kindred spirits, like, hey, how you doing? And hi, Chris, how are you? And when I finally sat down, I was like, can I get an interview with you? She's like, absolutely. So she was like this old adorable woman, just having the time of her life, just fans coming up. And during the interview, I ended up splicing this out, but during the interview, I had to stop the interview because somebody come up. They're like, hey, I want to talk to you. And she was like, oh, yes. Can we stop for a minute? I'm like, absolutely. Do your thing. These guys are here for you. So, and then she talked to them and whatnot. And it was about like 5 minutes. And then they were done. So we went back to talking. But yeah, here it is. This is the very last interview of Morgan Lofting, conducted October 20 something. I don't remember the exact day, 2024. And she passed in early November. So yeah, not too long after. Enjoy.
Geek Time is honored to finally bring you the very last interview ever conducted with the woman that brought G.I. Joe's Baroness to life, as well as a few Transformers, the late, the great Morgan Lofting.
All right, this is Chris Boris. I am talking to the great voice actor, Morgan, who played the Baroness in G.I. Joe. I'm super excited because she was just a great character. How do you feel about her?
I'm still a great character. Hello. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to meet you. I met you a few days ago. And
yes.
And it's great because like you have that voice that just reminds me of my childhood. We all have those voices.
All right. I was just teasing somebody that said they came up and they said, you're the voice of my childhood. And I went, oh, okay. But yes.
So how did you get the job for Baroness?
They held an audition and again, it always feels like it was a smaller group of people at the time that were actually doing cartoons. I mean, Hanna-Barbera was huge, and Sunbow was doing G.I. Joe. I knew one of the people that was having the audition, Don Jurwitz, who worked for Sunbow, and they called me in, and they called a bunch, but there wasn't a mob scene. I was part of the original bunch with Chris Latta and Michael Bell, and there were like 8 or 9 of us,
Now, one of the great things that you guys did is you recorded your lines together. I'm sure all kinds of...
Yeah. Well, yes, we did a table read where we would all sit around the table and read the script. With Don Jurwitz directed the first 4 shows, and then Wally Burr came in to direct everything else. And we would sit around, so we would get a sense of how Wally wanted the show to go. The scripts were good. They really were. And Wally paced everything really, really well.
Yeah, and you could tell it too.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you turn off the sound and just watch the pictures, this is the era where you didn't have that much animation happening. And so it's kind of, I won't say static, but we're verging on it. But by the time you have the dialogue and the music and the sound effects, and then we would go in and Wally would say, I want wild fight sounds. Oh, and all that kind of, it was just fun.
Do you have any memorable lines from doing?
Oh, God, I just signed a picture. That awful thing. It's the 80s. So the writers, who were all guys, what are you going to do with women characters if they don't have a boyfriend? Oh, let me think. So this awful line, Destro, I hear bells. Just Cobra and yelling Cobra.
Now, it's interesting because now, being older, it kind of sounds the character that you do kind of reminiscent of Natasha Fattel from Bullwinkle.
Oh, it might be. Oh, God, I love Jay Ward cartoons. Oh. Well, except that when I went in to read, they gave you a black and white picture, a little bit of a biography of the person, which must be where I got the idea that she was from Middle Europe, that kind. And then they'd give you a sheet of lines, and you go out far away from everyone so that nobody steals what you're going to do, and you just play. And somehow I ended up, this accent is from nowhere. Nobody sounds like this. This is my accent, and she's not Russian. She's Middle European. And then I really think the thing that cinched it for me, if you've ever heard me yell Cobra, I can be quite loud. When I lived in New York, my voice would cut diagonally across 6th Avenue, so I can be very loud. And I just let it rip, man. I barked a little off the microphone and Michael Bell used to say there's blood on the glass. Control room window. There's blood on the control room window, but I loved her.
Now, was there any voice actors that you looked up to that you ended up getting to meet?
No.
I think I met Dawes Butler, who did, Captain Crunch.
Oh,
of course. And I met, Noah Blank, who is Mel's son, and he ended up doing, after his father died, he ended up doing a lot of his father's voices.
Yeah, so the Captain Crunch guy, he also has a connection with the Bullwinkle show. That's where he is most famous.
Oh my God, did he?
Yes. Oh. Played a lot of characters in like Fractured Fairy Tales and things like that.
Yeah. I love Jay Wood. The first one I ever saw was Crusader Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
Yay.
Now you also did a voice in the Transformers as well.
Yes. They only had, what's her name? Oh, Sue Blue in the movie. I did Firestar and Moonracer early in the television series. Yeah. I had done the Baroness, was doing the Baroness. She was turning into a little bit of a sensation. And Wally was casting Transformers. Now, originally, Transformers were supposed to be androgynous voices. Well, androgynous means to me that gender-free. Okay. So I'm waiting for the audition. All guys. All the time. And I did come back. I did lots of other stuff. The Black Cat.
Oh, yes.
That was the original Black Cat. And the cool thing about doing Spider-Man, it was Spider-Man Syndicated, not the Saturday morning, was that I got to do Aunt May. That's the cool thing about doing voiceover. I could go from the Black Cat to, well, Petey, I really think,
right? Oh, that's great.
I know.
I love it.
It was fun.
All right, Morgan, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but
okay. All right.
it was so great talking to you. It's such a pleasure.
And you too. It was nice to meet you.
All right, well, welcome back, guys, to Geek Time. We're finishing off this in memoriam episode. So I hope that you guys got a lot out of this episode as we celebrated the lives of Linda and Morgan. So thanks again to Barry Putt for stopping by and talking about Alice. A very special thanks to Morgan Lofting, wherever you are. Rest in peace. Thank you very, very much for being a part of Geek Time, and I hope this episode goes a long way in keeping that memory of you alive. So, all right, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more guests, more news, and all the geeky stuff that you've come to expect from Geek Time.
Live long and prosper.
Geek Time.